Tariffs, lies, and geopolitical chess. The war against Mexico and Latin America. Can't believe I'm saying that. Diplomacy, in its purest form, is meant to be a bridge between nations, a conduit for mutual respect, negotiation, and progress. But what we are witnessing today is not diplomacy. It's coercion, flat out coercion, blunt force warfare, narrative manipulation, and it's geopolitical posturing. The United States has once again turned its sights on Mexico, imposing fresh tariffs, shattering trade agreements, and reigniting the tired, inflammatory rhetoric that has long been a staple of American foreign policy towards Latin America. And as if on cue, the old script is being dusted off. Mexico is unsafe. Mexico is controlled by cartel. Mexico is a threat. These are the headlines flooding US media. The echoes of a narrative designed not to inform, but to justify aggression. Now let's be clear, this is not, I repeat, it is not about security, nor about cartels, nor about protecting the American people. This is about power, flat out, about economic dominance, about ensuring that Mexico, a nation on the rise, yes, on the rise, never fully escapes Washington's grip. And the timing? Perfectly calculated, because this is about more than just Mexico. It's about reshaping the entire geopolitical order of the Americas. Trump's tariff blitz is changing the rules of the game. Mexico has been one of the United States' strongest trade partners under the Tratado between Mexico, United States, and Canada, known as TEMEC in Latin America, the successor to NAFTA. Now, even when NAFTA was around, we were always in a situation where the United States and Mexico were always business partners. It's a relationship that's worth over $850 billion annually. An economic partnership that fuels industries on both sides of the border. But Trump, true to his transactional strongman style, has decided that very agreements he signed no longer matter. With the stroke of a pen, he has imposed steep tariffs on Mexican imports, effectively declaring an economic war on a key ally. The official justification, security. He claims Mexico is not doing enough to stop the flow of migrants, despite the fact that migration from Mexico itself is at historically low levels. The real goal is actually to destabilize Mexico's growing economic independence and keep it reliant on US markets. This is a classic playbook of economic imperialism. Punish emerging economies before they gain enough momentum to challenge the status quo. But Washington's miscalculation is glaring. Mexico in 2025 is not the Mexico of 1995. This is a country that has diversified its economy, strengthened its ties with Asia and Europe, and positioned itself as a global manufacturing hub. Tesla, BYD, and countless international companies have invested tens of billions into Mexico's future. This includes General Motors, Ford. They're the primary exporters out of Mexico into, guess where? The United States. And Mexico is answering back, not with submission, but with strategy. Let's talk about this a little bit more. The cartel narrative, weaponizing fear to justify control. We have seen this pattern before. Every time Mexico asserts its independence, the US media machine turns up the volume on crime and cartels. Hollywood glorifies American gangsters, Godfather, Goodfellas, Breaking Bad. You know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to Mexico, the same stories become a justification for economic punishment and political interference. Yes, Mexico does have its challenges. But the reality is, American cities like Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, and many others have higher murder rates than many Mexican states, Mexico is not plagued by mass shootings, nor the deep racial violence that scars the American landscape. Yet Washington's narrative remains the same. Mexico is dangerous. Mexico is corrupt. Mexico is ungovernable. And what is the solution they propose exactly? More US control? More intervention? More pressure? The goal is simple: to keep Mexico in a perpetual state of dependency, a nation that is always reacting to US policies rather than dictating its own. Take a look at a little bit further south, the Panama provocation. Did you know Marco Rubio making a visit to Panama in a very calculated way? While Mexico is under economic attack, another chess piece is being moved on the geopolitical board, and it's in Panama. In a move that can only be described as deliberate provocation, Trump has sent Marco Rubio, his Secretary of State, to Panama on Chinese New Year. For months, Trump has insisted that Panama is under Chinese control. He has openly questioned whether the US should intervene in the Panama Canal, reigniting Cold War era tensions. But there's the truth: Panama is an independent nation, and its people, many of whom have Chinese roots, like in any other major country, there's Chinatowns all over the world. They are, though, Panamanian, even though they have Chinese roots. The timing of Rubio's visit is no accident. It allows the US media to capture footage of Chinese New Year celebrations, creating the illusion that Panama is somehow celebrating China while Washington watches. The visual narrative is powerful, manipulative. It's also false, patently false. This is an old colonial trick, a tactic used to manufacture suspicion, to set the stage for greater intervention. And in a world where perception is reality, these images will be weaponized to justify further pressure on Panama. Let's keep things straight. Panama and the United States have had a long friendship. Did you know that Panama has a dollarized economy? Yeah, they use the US dollar. They have been so close to the United States that they never once feared that utilizing the dollar for its own economy would somehow come to haunt them. And I'm sure today, many of them are wondering, how much control exactly does Washington have economically when they're running the US dollar as their currency? How much more proof do you need that Panama has been a long-term ally? How much more proof do we need that Mexico has long been a long-term ally? How much more proof do we need that Colombia has long been an ally? Here's the thing, though. Trump is picking a fight with countries he knows or he thinks that he can do a lot with to send a message. So what's next? Call to action for Latin America. That's what's next. Trump has made his strategy clear. He is using economic warfare to weaken Mexico, Panama, Colombia, and others. He is manipulating narratives to maintain control and positioning Panama as the next battleground. What Washington refuses to acknowledge, however, is that Latin America is no longer playing defense. Mexico is expanding its economic ties beyond the United States. Colombia has defied Washington on deportation policies. Brazil is pushing back on US influence in regional affairs. The old order is cracking, and a new one taking shape. But the question is, will Latin America recognize this moment for what it is? This is not the time for silence. This is not the time to retreat. This is not the time for submission. This is the time to counter these narratives aggressively, to expose the manipulation, to call the bluffs, to tell our stories. Those of us who know Latin America, those of us who have traveled extensively throughout the Americas, maybe you haven't traveled, but you have family there. Question the narratives you are being fed. I can tell you right now, all those narratives, at least the ones I've read thus far, in major media, patently false. If we continue to play by Washington's rules, the game is already lost. But if Latin America moves decisively and it embraces economic alliances and it strengthens regional cooperation, if it refuses to be bullied balance of power can switch, because the truth is this: Trump's policies are not about security. They are not about crime. They are not about democracy. They are about control. The only way to win this game is to stop playing by their rules. So that's the analysis on a Saturday. Came into the studio and all. We thought this was going to be a weekly podcast. I guess the news cycle had something else for us, but we're excited about it. We're going to keep putting out informational pieces. We're going to go ahead and begin to counter point by point some of these narratives. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for following. Please share. If you're enjoying these analyses, please let others know about it. We have an English version, a Spanish version. Listen to both of them. The Spanish version is El Archivo de la Embajada, and the English version, of course, is The Embassy File. You've been briefed, and we'll be back soon with another edition